Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Mushahid Hussain Sahab, Chairman Foreign Relations Committee, members of the Foreign Relations Committee, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to begin by thanking you for organizing this policy seminar. I'm sure the deliberations that will take place will be very useful in helping us chart the way forward. I would like to acknowledge the support I have received from you and the Foreign Relations Committee of the Senate in furthering the cause of Kashmir. Many of us on the stage here, I recall clearly, on the 5th of February earlier this year, at the House of Commons, articulating the point that you will be talking about. So thank you for your support. And it is very important, when we talk of messaging, it is very important that we speak with one voice. That is today Pakistan's strength. You saw day before, Rahul Gandhi, along with 11 leaders of 9 political parties of the opposition, locked up and deported from Srinagar. You've seen 7 petitions filed in the Indian Supreme Court, civil society, retired generals, members of the Indian Civil Service, members of civil society, disagreeing with the action of 5th of August. And fortunately, in Pakistan today, despite political differences on Kashmir, we are speaking with one voice, and that is what gives you strength, and thank you for doing that. 22 days of day and night curfew, 528 hours, agonizing hours, 12 million innocent people brutally cut off from the world through the imposition of the modern Iron Curtain and draconian curfew, with Indian forces massacring people. Thousands, including children, imprisoned without any charge sheet or process. Bereaved mothers of young children, including 4 to 6 years old, inhumanely snatched away from their homes in the cover of darkness for no fathomable crime except being Kashmiri. Empty streets, political leaders imprisoned, freedom of press, including foreign media, held hostage to guns and more occupation forces than civilians, with a soldier posted virtually outside every doorstep. Funerals attacked and the slain buried under police watch in the dead of the night to avoid protests. Ladies and gentlemen, this brutal picture is not from Hitler's Nazi Germany, but from the self-proclaimed largest democracy of the world, the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where the ruthless Indian occupation and siege of the Indian occupied Kashmir continues on the 22nd day without any respite, despite international condemnation and censure. On the 5th of August, India further consolidated its illegal occupation of IOK by dispensing with the special status of IOK. This illegal, unilateral and coercive action by the Modi regime aims to alter the internationally accepted disputed status of Jammu and Kashmir and to bring about demographic changes in IOK in order to preempt the outcome of a future UN plebiscite envisaged under the UN Security Council resolutions. Knowing fully well that the Kashmiris would not accept this draconian step, India severed all lines of communication. Internet, mobile phones, even landlines in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, cutting off millions of Kashmiris from the world. Harsh curfew and a ban on public assembly continue. Thousands of innocent Kashmiris remain detained. Children are being kidnapped by the Indian occupation forces to coerce adults into submission. Reputable international media and human rights organizations report on night raids by Indian occupation forces, abduction of young boys, sexual assault of women, torture and lack of access to even baby food and essential medicines. Ladies and gentlemen, Jammu and Kashmir, as stated by the Qaid himself, is the jugular vein of Pakistan. We will go to every extent to defend the human rights and legal rights of Kashmiris living under brutal Indian occupation. Our response to this illegal Indian step was immediate and in line with our consistent position on Jammu and Kashmir being an internationally recognized dispute pending on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. Pakistan immediately condemned this unilateral, illegal Indian action. The Prime Minister chaired the meeting of the National Security Committee, which, amongst other things, decided to downgrade relations with India and comprehensively briefed the Parliament on Pakistan's position, detailing the full spectrum of our response. The joint session of the Parliament and its unanimously adopted resolution rejecting the illegal unilateral Indian actions effectively demonstrate Pakistan's unified support to our Kashmiri brethren resisting India's illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir. Our intensive diplomatic outreach focused on highlighting the UN Security Council resolutions which reaffirm the right to self-determination to the Kashmiris through a free, fair and impartial plebiscite to be held under the UN auspices. I personally wrote to the UN Secretary General and the President of the UN General Assembly and UN Security Council, OIC Secretary General, as well as the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I also personally participated in the special session of the OIC Contact Group on Jammu and Kashmir, convened on Pakistan's request. I continue to speak to my counterparts all over the world, including the P5 members. The United Nations Security Council, despite frantic Indian opposition, held a closed-door meeting on the current situation. The very fact that a meeting of United Nations Security Council was held after 50 years on the Jammu and Kashmir dispute reaffirms the validity of the Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cognizant of our challenges, including the regrettable reality that Pakistan remains a convenient red herring as well as an object of fear and hatred for India. The Modi regime unremittingly recycles half-baked truths to delegitimize the indigenous Kashmiri struggle for the right to self-determination in a desperate attempt to equate it with terrorism, to deceive the world and detract attention from its nefarious actions. We continue to sensitize the world about our real concern of Indian diversionary tactics, including the Indian escalation at the line of control and the working boundary, and the possibility of an Indian false flag operation. The Prime Minister has repeatedly flagged this, and I briefed the diplomatic corps most recently this Friday on the same. Ladies and gentlemen, Indian actions are a grave destabilizing threat to the already volatile situation in South Asia and will have serious implications unless curtailed. The jingoistic rhetoric from India and the intensifying oppressive measures in IOK should bring home the stark reality that India resorts to routine escalation at the LOC to divert international attention from the worsening situation in the Indian occupied Kashmir. The world can no longer afford to remain silent on the Indian state terrorism in IOK. This is a nuclear flashpoint which cannot be ignored any longer. Indian aggression and hegemonic designs are a threat to regional peace and security and need to be taken seriously. Pakistan has no desire to escalate, but the only real solution for Jammu and Kashmir dispute is for India to resolve the dispute in line with the United Nations Security Council resolutions. Since 1989, more than 100,000 Kashmiris have been martyred by the Indian occupation forces. Approximately 12,000 women have been gang raped, and about 108,000 children have been orphaned. It is time to put an end to this misery of Kashmiris living under Indian systematic repression for over 7 decades now. Ladies and gentlemen, I uncovered the shroud and saw my son. This is the agonizing statement of the father of Osab Altaf, martyr of recent Indian clampdown. According to Indian reports themselves, this 17-year-old boy was forcibly drowned by Indian occupation forces. It is time for the world to acknowledge that this is a sentence no parent should have to utter ever. It is time for the silent Kashmiri voices to be amplified and for Indian state terrorism and the deceptive all is well in Indian occupied Kashmir rhetoric to stop. And that's the impression I have that President Modi Prime Minister Modi gave to President Trump in his meeting in France. That all is well and we can solve our issues bilaterally. And I must acknowledge that President Trump immediately responded, fine, but you have not been able to resolve this bilaterally for decades. Pakistan will go to every forum to ensure that Indian atrocities in IOK are halted and the dispute is resolved in line with the aspiration of the Kashmiris and the UN resolutions. As the Prime Minister said, the UNSC meeting is a reaffirmation of its resolution on Jammu and Kashmir, ensuring addressing the suffering of the Kashmiris and resolution of this dispute is the responsibility of the UN Security Council. As is evident from our reaction, which shall continue, we remain resolute in extending unflinching political, moral and diplomatic support to the Kashmiris. The time has come to put an end to the suffering of the Kashmiris and break the vicious circle of confrontation in South Asia, and Pakistan will take every step to ensure that. I thank you. Last point, Mr. Chairman. As you know, and I suspect this regime to go to any extent, and I honestly feel that the Indus Water Treaty that was respected during the 1965 war, 1971 war, they might tinker with it. They might not implement it in letter and spirit. And the first manifestation of that is that they were bound to share data with us from the 1st of July to the 30th of October, which is the monsoon flood season. They were bilaterally committed to that. They did not this year sign the bilateral agreement that they have been doing so for years.
So this is the first time they have.
Yes, sir. And
I believe, sir, they testified that this was given for the
later,
but partially.
मैं आपको अर्ज कर रहा हूं तो जिम्मेदारी से कह रहा हूं. And I think this could be the next challenge that Pakistan will be facing. Being a lower riparian, as a nation, we should be prepared for that. And as I leave this hall, I will be convening and chairing a meeting on the Indus Water Treaty. I have invited all stakeholders to come and sit with me and discuss what options we have, what obligations we have, and what should we do in case the madness goes on. Thank you.